How dare you disobey a direct order?
What would you do if you paid for your seat, but the world told you that you didn't belong there? What happens when calm dignity collides with prejudice at 30,000 feet? This is the story of Dr. Selina Harper, a woman who boarded a flight like anyone else, only to be told, in front of strangers and cameras, that her presence in first class was a mistake. She could have shouted, she could have walked away, but instead, she chose to stand her ground with a stillness so powerful it shook an entire industry. Why did a single confrontation in Seat 2A spark outrage across the nation? How did one woman's strength force executives, investors, and even governments to reckon with the truth? And in the silence between words, what toll did it take on her heart, her family, and her future? Stay with me, because this isn't just a flight, it's a journey into justice, dignity, and the price of being seen. If you believe stories like this matter, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. The hum of engines filled the cabin, a low vibration that seemed to run beneath every heartbeat. Flight 827 was boarding at Gate C14, its sleek silver body gleaming under the afternoon sun. Business travelers rushed in with rolling bags, parents wrangled children, and the line for first class moved slowly, deliberately. At the center of it all stood Dr. Selina Harper. Selina was 42 years old, but she carried herself with the measured calm of someone who had weathered more storms than most people ever imagined. A navy blazer hugged her shoulders, tailored with quiet precision. Her leather carry-on bore no flashy logo, only the soft polish of something built to last. Every step she took seemed unhurried, as though she had all the time in the world. Yet her eyes told a different story. Behind their warmth was calculation, restraint, and a sharpness that never dulled. She handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, who scanned it without a second glance. Seat 2A, Dr. Harper. Enjoy your flight. Selina gave a polite nod and walked down the jet bridge. The recycled air grew heavier with each step, that familiar scent of jet fuel and fabric cleaner pressing into memory. She had boarded hundreds of flights before international conferences, late-night negotiations, urgent trips to stabilize corporate branches. This one, she thought, should have been no different. A routine trip from New York to San Francisco, a chance to review reports in quiet, a brief escape into the stillness that only altitude could provide. But she felt the edge of something else, something electric in the air. Instinct told her this would not be an ordinary flight. Inside the cabin, first class gleamed with polished surfaces. Leather seats curved like cocoons, their headrests embroidered with the airline's crest. Aho passengers settled in with the practiced entitlement of frequent flyers. A man in a tailored gray suit barked into his phone without caring who heard. A woman in pearls requested champagne before even stowing her bag. It was, Selina thought, the theater of status and endless performance in which she had long since stopped participating. She found Seat 2A by the window. The seat was hers, paid in full with her own account, reserved weeks in advance. She placed her bag carefully in the overhead compartment and sat down, smoothing the fabric of her blazer. From the corner of her eye, she saw a flight attendant glance her way. His name tag read, Ethan Walsh. Ethan was young 29, maybe 30, his uniform pressed sharp, his posture brisk with self-importance. He scanned the cabin with eyes that did not rest on people so much as assess them. Measuring, calculating, judging. When his gaze settled on Selina, It lingered too long. "Ma'am," he said after a pause, stepping closer. "This section is reserved for first-class passengers." Selina looked up, her voice even. "I am a first-class passenger. This is my seat. 2A. Something flickered in Ethan's eyes, a shadow of disbelief. He glanced at her carry-on, at her blazer, at the way she sat without apology. None of it seemed to satisfy him. "May I see your boarding pass again?" His tone carried that dangerous softness people used when they had already decided you didn't belong. Selina reached into her pocket, retrieved the crisp paper stub, and handed it to him. He studied it longer than necessary, his lips pressing thin. Finally, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you. I'll need to double-check this with the purser." She gave a small nod. "Of course. Inside, though." She felt the familiar weight settle over her chest, the silent calculation of whether to let it slide or to stand firm. She had been here before, in offices, in restaurants, in boardrooms where assumptions spoke louder than introductions. Each time she chose restraint, each time she chose dignity. Yet each time the question lingered, how many times must she prove she belonged before proof itself lost meaning? Across the aisle, a young woman watched closely. Olivia Grant, 27, clutched her phone like a lifeline. She was on her way to a tech convention in San Francisco, live-streaming parts of her journey for her modest but loyal following. Something about the way the flight attendant lingered at Selina's seat stirred her. She opened her camera discreetly, angling it to capture without being obvious. Her audience loved authenticity, and what she sensed now was the beginning of something raw. Ethan returned moments later, this time with another attendant trailing behind him. Monica Reed, older than Ethan by a few years, wore the same uniform, but with a softer presence. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty as Ethan spoke loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Ma'am, there appears to be some confusion. We don't have you listed for seat 2A. You may need to move to the main cabin." The words hung in the air like static. A businessman paused mid-email, raising an eyebrow. The woman in pearls sipped her champagne. Amused, Olivia Grant pressed record. Selina folded her hands in her lap, her voice calm but unmistakably firm. "There is no confusion. This is my seat. Confirmed at purchase. Perhaps the system hasn't updated correctly." Ethan's smile thinned further. "I'll need you to step aside while we resolve the issue. For the comfort of our other passengers. For the comfort of our other passengers." The phrase struck like a cold knife. Selina inhaled slowly, centering herself. She could feel the old anger stir, the memory of boardrooms where her voice was ignored until repeated by someone else, of contracts questioned until signed by someone with a different face. Yet she refused to let anger define her now. Instead, she leaned back slightly, eyes steady. "I'll remain in my seat. Please do whatever checks you need. I'll wait." Ethan stiffened, unused to resistance. "If you refuse to comply, I'll have to involve the captain." Selina tilted her head. "Do what you must." The hum of the engine seemed to grow louder, vibrating through the floor. Olivia's livestream chat began to fill with comments. "What's going on? Why are they bothering her? She literally has the seat." Viewers who had tuned in for travel updates now found themselves witnessing something else, something far more gripping. Selina closed her eyes briefly, centering herself. She thought of the irony. Of all the flights, of all the cabins, of all the days, it would be today Tuesday. 2:47 p.m. that assumptions would rise again to test her patience. She thought of the hours ahead, the meeting waiting in San Francisco, the reforms she hoped to finalize. She thought of her daughter, who had once asked, "Mom, why do people look at us differently when we fly first class?" She opened her eyes, calm, steady, unshaken. This was not just another flight. This was the beginning of something far larger. The air in the first-class cabin felt heavier now, as though the tension itself had altered the atmosphere. Conversation softened, screens dimmed, and all eyes turned, either openly or in furtive glances, toward Seat 2A. Passengers may not have spoken aloud, but their expressions told the story clearly. Something unusual was happening here, and no one wanted to look away. Selina sat motionless, hands folded neatly on her lap, posture unyielding. Her gaze drifted to the window, where a sunbeam caught on the wing, a bright reflection against the glass. In that quiet moment, she considered the crossroads before her. She could acquiesce, stand, move to economy, and avoid a public spectacle. She had done this before, in restaurants where servers questioned her reservation, in boutiques where clerks hovered as though waiting for her to steal. Compliance had been the cost of peace, but peace purchased with silence always came with a debt. Today she wondered if the debt had grown too large to ignore. Ethan Walsh returned, his stride clipped with authority he did not truly possess. Behind him trailed Monica Reed, her face carefully neutral. Ethan stopped beside Selina's seat and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Ma'am, I've checked with the manifest. There is no record of you in this seat. If you do not comply and move to the rear, I will have no choice but to remove you from the aircraft." The words sliced through the cabin like a sudden gust of cold air. The businessman in gray suit lowered his phone. Olivia Grant raised hers higher, ensuring her audience caught every second. Her live-stream viewer count jumped to nearly 1,000. Comments scrolled in rapid fire. Why is he targeting her? She literally has the ticket. This feels off. Selina turned her head slowly to face Ethan. Her voice, calm and deliberate, seemed to settle into the bones of everyone listening. "I will not move from my seat. I purchased it. I reserved it. I am sitting exactly where I belong. If you wish to involve the captain, do so. I am not leaving." Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. His hand twitched as though tempted to reach for her arm, but he stopped himself. Perhaps he sensed the cameras. Perhaps he feared the quiet steel in her tone. Instead, he leaned closer and whispered, his voice a sharp contrast to her calm. "You're making this difficult. You don't want trouble here." Selina met his eyes. "Trouble is already here. The difference is how you choose to handle it." Her words left Ethan momentarily speechless. Monica, standing just behind him, shifted her weight nervously. She had seen this before, colleagues making judgments, passengers humiliated quietly, a dozen little injustices swept away before anyone outside the cabin knew they existed. But this felt different. This felt like something that could not be hidden. Monica cleared her throat gently. "Ethan, maybe we should double-check with the system again. Sometimes the manifest updates late." Ethan shot her a look that silenced further suggestion. He turned sharply and walked toward the galley, muttering about calling the captain. Monica lingered, then crouched slightly, lowering her voice so only Selina could hear. "I'm sorry. He can be stubborn. I'll try to sort this quietly." Selina gave her a small nod of acknowledgement, though her eyes never softened. She had learned to recognize the difference between apology and action, Monica's tone suggested she might act, but Selina had no faith left in whispered sympathies. What mattered would be what happened when choices were on the line. Across the aisle, Olivia spoke softly into her phone, narrating for her growing audience. "This is unreal, guys." She literally showed her boarding pass. They're still saying, "She doesn't belong." Viewers poured into the chat. "This is discrimination." "She's calm. Why are they escalating?" Another wrote, "Reminds me of that story last year about the guy kicked out of first class. This is the same thing all over again." Olivia's hands trembled slightly. She knew she was witnessing something important, but she also knew the weight of streaming it live. Once the internet took hold, there was no pulling it back. Selina closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment of inward reflection. Her thoughts drifted to her father, a man who had taught her the art of restraint. He used to say, "When the world tells you that you don't belong, remember that your dignity isn't theirs to give or take." Those words steadied her now, even as the knot in her stomach tightened. She was tired of having to embody calm when she wanted to scream, tired of carrying the weight of proof on her shoulders. Yet she knew rage would only confirm their assumptions. Dignity was her weapon, and she wielded it with precision. The cabin lights flickered as the aircraft prepared for pushback. Ethan returned, this time with the purser, a tall man with a clipped accent named Richard Halloway. His uniform bore the subtle insignia of authority within the crew. He stopped beside Selina, his expression carefully professional. "Ma'am, I'm Purser Halloway. I understand there is some confusion regarding your seat." "There is no confusion," Selina replied evenly. "This is my seat. 2A, paid in full, reserved in advance. I've provided my boarding pass already." Halloway studied her for a moment, then turned to Ethan. "Did you verify with the captain's manifest?" Ethan nodded sharply. "No record for her name in first class." Halloway looked back at Selina. "May I see your boarding pass personally?" Selina retrieved it once more, handing it to him without haste. He studied it, brows furrowing. Then his expression shifted, subtle, but noticeable. The pass was valid. Perfectly valid. Seat 2A, Dr. Selina Harper. He looked up, eyes narrowing slightly at Ethan. "Did you input her name correctly when you called it?" And Ethan's face flushed. "Yes, of course I did." Something in Halloway's silence suggested he wasn't convinced. Still, he handed the pass back to Selina with a practiced smile. "Thank you, Dr. Harper. We'll resolve this. Please remain seated." He turned away, motioning Ethan toward the galley with a curt flick of his head. Their hushed voices carried back faintly. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, whispers rising like static. Olivia's stream surged to nearly 3,000 viewers, comments flying faster than she could read. Selina breathed in slowly, feeling the vibration of the engines beneath her feet. She sensed the path unfolding. This would not end quietly. It never did. Yet she also knew something else. Moments like these had power. They could crush reputations, but they could also reshape them. The question was whose reputation would shatter before landing. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are completing final checks before departure. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The routine words sounded almost absurd against the backdrop of tension in the cabin. Selina leaned her head back, closing her eyes. For a flicker of a moment, she wished she could disappear into the anonymity of the clouds, to drift above the world without judgment, without scrutiny. But anonymity was never her gift. Her gift was visibility, the kind that demanded change. the kind that turned humiliation into transformation. She wondered if she had the strength to use it once more. She thought of the meeting awaiting her in San Francisco, a boardroom filled with executives, contracts, and expectations. She thought of the reforms she had fought for, the systems she had tried to shape, and she thought of her daughter's voice again. "Mom, why do they look at us like we don't belong?" Selina opened her eyes, calm, steady, resolved. Whatever storm awaited her on this flight, she would not weather it in silence. The plane began to push back from the gate, but inside seat 2A, the true journey had only just begun. The plane rolled away from the gate, its engines humming louder as the nose turned toward the runway. Yet inside seat 2A, time felt suspended. Selina Harper sat motionless, her seatbelt buckled, her hands resting lightly on the armrests. To an onlooker, she appeared calm, even serene. But beneath her stillness, her thoughts churned like storm clouds. She had grown used to moments like this, disbelief at her presence, questions about her legitimacy, a demand to prove, again and again, that she belonged where she was. It was a script she had read too many times, in too many rooms, with too many faces. The uniform changed, the scenery shifted, but the message was always the same: people like you don't belong here. Her mind drifted backward, unbidden, to a memory etched into her bones. She was 16, a teenager filled with ambition, walking with her father into a bank to open her first savings account. The clerk behind the counter had looked past her as though she were invisible, addressing only her father, even after he insisted she was the one opening the account. When she tried to hand over her identification, the clerk's smile was tight and false. "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" he had asked, as though a black girl's future plans could not possibly involve financial independence. Her father's hand had rested on her shoulder then, grounding her. He had whispered words that lived within her, still Selina. "Dignity isn't what they give you. It's what you carry, no matter how they try to strip it away." That lesson steadied her now, but it did not make the sting any less sharp. Ethan Walsh stalked past once more, his movements clipped, muttering into a device clipped at his waist. She heard fragments: captain, refusing, non-compliant. Each word carried the weight of accusation, a framing of her presence as defiance. Selina exhaled through her nose, slow and deliberate, non-compliant. How many times had that word been weaponized? It reduced dignity to disorder, autonomy to threat. Across the aisle, Olivia Grant's livestream audience swelled. She could see comments blur across the screen. "She's so calm. Why are they treating her like this?" Another "I swear. This always happens to black travelers. Same story, different day." The audience begged for updates, their outrage building as though the cabin were a stage and Selina the unwilling lead. Olivia's hand trembled, but her voice carried steady as she narrated. She showed her boarding pass twice. She's sitting in her seat. And still, they're threatening to remove her. You all see this, right? You all see what's happening. Selina's eyes flicked to Olivia briefly. There was gratitude there, though unspoken. She had spent years fighting in boardrooms, wielding contracts and leverage, but social media was another battlefield altogether, one she had not chosen yet could not ignore. She understood power when she saw it. A live stream was not just a recording, it was a weapon of accountability. Monica Reed hovered near the galley, her hands twisting the edge of a napkin. Her stomach churned with unease. She had joined the airline believing in service, in the romance of flight, in connecting people across skies. Yet in 4 years she had witnessed too many moments like this. A passenger singled out, a demand made, a quiet shame inflicted. She had told herself it was none of her business, that her job was to support her team. But watching Selina sit so composed, resisting without anger, Monica felt the lie of her own silence press against her chest. Ethan returned, standing straighter now as though fortified by unseen authority. "Dr. Harper," he said, the title slipping out reluctantly. "The captain is aware of the situation. He will be speaking with you directly." Selina inclined her head slightly. "Very well." The engine surged as the aircraft accelerated down the runway. Passengers pressed back against their seats, the familiar weight of takeoff settling across the cabin. The ground dropped away, the city shrinking beneath scattered clouds. They were airborne now, and the confinement of altitude made the tension feel sharper. Captain Daniel Foster emerged from the cockpit once the seatbelt sign dimmed. His presence carried the weight of command, his uniform immaculate, his stride measured. At 50, he had the steady confidence of decades in the sky. He stopped at seat 2A, glancing down at Selina, then shifting his gaze to Ethan. "What's the problem here?" the captain asked, his voice neutral but edged with impatience. Ethan spoke quickly. "This passenger is occupying a seat not assigned to her. I verified with the manifest. She refused to move when asked." Selina looked up, her tone calm, steady, but carrying beneath it the sharpness of steel. "Captain, my name is Dr. Selina Harper. This is my seat, 2A, paid for, confirmed. Twice I have presented my boarding pass. Twice I have been told I do not belong." The captain took the stub from her hand, glancing at it. His brow furrowed slightly. "It says 2A. "Yes, but the system did not show your name on the first-class list." Selina met his eyes, her voice soft but piercing. "And does the system carry more weight than the document in your hand, or more than the truth sitting before you?" The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Even the businessman in the gray suit, so consumed by his own world minutes ago, leaned forward to watch. The woman in pearls shifted uncomfortably, champagne glass poised mid-air, every ear strained for the captain's reply. Captain Foster cleared his throat, his jaw tightening. The system must be cross-checked. "For the sake of order, I'll need you to relocate until we confirm." The words landed with the force of a verdict. Relocate, for the sake of order. Selina's heart thudded once, heavy. She thought of her father again. She thought of her daughter's question. She thought of every moment she had chosen silence for peace. And she realized peace would never be given. It would only be taken if she allowed it. She inhaled, letting the air fill her lungs, letting her resolve crystallize. Then she spoke, her voice calm, clear, carrying to every corner of the cabin. "No, Captain, I will not move. I am in my seat, and I will remain here." The words rippled through the cabin, quiet yet thunderous. Olivia's phone captured it, her audience exploding with comments. Monica's breath caught, the napkin in her hand twisting tighter. Ethan's face flushed, anger flashing. The captain's expression hardened, caught between authority and doubt. Selina leaned back, her gaze unwavering. She had chosen her path. There would be no retreat. Whatever storm followed, she would face it with dignity and tact. The cabin, once filled with whispers, now simmered with anticipation. Everyone knew the moment was far from over. It was only beginning. The plane steadied at 30,000 feet, cruising above a quilt of clouds. Outside, the sky was clear, serene. the kind of blue that poets tried to capture in words. Inside, however, turbulence rumbled not from air currents, but from tension that filled the cabin like an invisible storm. Dr. Selina Harper remained seated in 2A, her posture relaxed, though every muscle in her body carried the weight of choice. Around her, the first-class cabin had transformed into an uneasy theater. Every passenger was both spectator and participant, whether they wanted to be or not. Captain Foster lingered near the galley, speaking low with Ethan Walsh. Selina caught fragments carried by the hum of engines, non-compliance, safety, protocol, words that turned humanity into procedures, dignity into obstacles. Ethan's eyes darted toward her repeatedly, brimming with a kind of triumph, as though every minute she remained under scrutiny confirmed his power. Olivia Grant angled her phone carefully, whispering updates to her swelling audience. 23,000 viewers, right now, she murmured, hardly believing the number herself. They're debating if she can stay, even though her boarding pass is right here. Look at her. She hasn't raised her voice once. Not once. The comments flooded in. This is unreal. She's so calm. They're in the wrong. Don't let them do this. The businessman in the gray suit finally spoke, his tone sharp. Can't you people settle this quietly? Some of us have connections to make. His irritation wasn't about justice or truth. It was about convenience. His words hung in the air like an echo of the world outside, where discomfort often outweighed conscience. Selina turned her head toward him, her voice low, steady. Sir, I assure you, no one wants this resolved more quickly than I do, but not at the cost of being treated as though I don't belong. The man shifted in his seat, unable to meet her gaze. He looked back at his tablet, but the cabin's silence revealed that her words had landed where they needed to. Monica Reed moved closer, balancing trays, though her attention remained fixed on Selina. She could no longer stomach the pit in her chest. Kneeling slightly, so only Selina could hear, Monica whispered, I believe you. I saw your pass. Please know, not all of us agree with how this is being handled. The kindness was small, but it pierced through the hostility like sunlight through cloud. Selina offered a brief smile. Thank you. The captain returned, his face drawn, his voice rehearsed. Dr. Harper, we've cross-checked the manifest. There appears to be a discrepancy with your booking. Until we verify with ground control, I must insist that you relocate to an alternate seat in economy. Gas rippled. Olivia's audience exploded in real time. Economy. After she paid for first, this is theft. This is discrimination. The comments multiplied faster than Olivia could scroll. Selina inhaled slowly, her composure unbroken. Captain Foster, she began, with respect. I purchased this seat. I am sitting in this seat. To move would not resolve your discrepancy. It would endorse it, and I will not do that. Her refusal was not loud, but it reverberated with finality. The captain's jaw clenched. Then I will have no choice but to escalate further. Regulations allow us to remove passengers who refuse crew instructions. Selina's heart beat heavier, but her face betrayed none of it. She thought again of her daughter's eyes, wide with curiosity, asking why dignity was always negotiable. Her inner voice wrestled with fear and fatigue. She wanted peace, to avoid spectacle, to simply arrive at her destination. Yet another voice, stronger, rose within. If not now, then when? If not me, then who? She lifted her chin. If removal is what you believe necessary, Captain, then I will not resist. But understand this, every second of this is being recorded. Every word is being broadcast. And every choice you make here will live beyond this cabin. For the first time, doubt flickered in the captain's eyes. He glanced toward Olivia's phone, then to the cluster of passengers now holding up their own devices. The story was already too large to contain. Ethan stepped forward, frustration breaking through. This isn't about cameras. This is about order. If you can't follow simple instructions, you don't belong here. His voice cracked slightly, revealing the fragility beneath his authority. Selina met his glare, her tone cutting without cruelty. Order without justice is not order, Mr. Walsh. It's oppression wrapped in uniform. The word stung, striking chords even among those who had remained silent. Monica's throat tightened. The woman in pearls lowered her glass, guilt flashing across her face. Even the businessman's eyes softened, though he said nothing. Captain Foster exhaled heavily. "Dr. Harper, I need to make a call." He turned, retreating toward the cockpit, leaving Ethan simmering. Monica conflicted, and the cabin on edge. Selina leaned back, finally allowing her eyelids to close briefly. Her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. Inside, though, the storm of memory returned. She remembered every room where she had been questioned, every contract she had negotiated twice as hard to prove she was worthy, every smile she had forced to mask the weariness of carrying other people's doubt. She remembered her father's steady hand, her daughter's searching eyes, and she knew this moment was more than her own discomfort. It was a crossroads, Olivia whispered into her phone, voice trembling with awe. "Y'all, I think we're watching history right now. She's not yelling, she's not fighting, but she's holding her ground. This is bigger than just a seat." Viewers agreed in floods of comments. She's teaching all of us what strength looks like. She's reminding us to stand firm. Another wrote, "Don't you dare move. You're fighting for every one of us who's been told we don't belong." The aircraft hummed on, oblivious to the battle inside. Outside, the horizon stretched endless and blue. Inside, justice itself felt suspended, waiting for gravity to decide where it would fall. The hum of the engines filled the silence left by Captain Foster's retreat. Every passenger seemed suspended between curiosity and unease, as though the cabin itself had stopped breathing. "Doctor?" Selina Harper sat motionless, her fingers resting lightly on the armrest, her mind weighing the choices before her. She had been underestimated too many times to count. Boardrooms where her ideas were dismissed until repeated by a man. Negotiations where her presence was questioned before her credentials were considered. And now here, in the rarefied air of first class, on an aircraft flying high above the clouds, she was again being told she did not belong. Ethan Walsh hovered nearby, his arms folded, his chest puffed with self-importance. Every glance he shot at Selina carried the same message: concede, and this ends. Yet beneath his rigid stance, there was something fragile, something almost desperate. He needed to win this exchange, not for safety, but for pride. Olivia Grant whispered into her phone, "We're at 29,000 viewers now. I don't even know what to say." She's still calm, still sitting in her seat. It's like watching a storm build, but she's the eye of it. Monica Reed, standing by the galley, clenched her hands until her knuckles whitened. Her loyalty to her uniform battled with the gnawing ache in her chest. She thought of her own father, who had taught her to treat every customer as a person first, never as a problem. And yet here she was, watching the very opposite unfold. Selina opened her eyes and looked straight ahead, her thoughts echoing in steady rhythm. You can surrender your dignity, or you can stand, but standing may cost you. She thought of her daughter, of the lessons she wanted to leave behind. A voice inside whispered, "This isn't just about a seat." It never was. She reached into her leather bag with deliberate calm. The cabin held its collective breath. Phones lifted higher, eager to catch every second. Olivia gasped softly. "She's pulling out her phone. Oh my God, is she really about to?" Selina tapped her screen, her face serene. She scrolled past familiar names until she landed on the one that mattered most now. She pressed the call button. One ring, two. A voice answered, steady, professional, tinged with alarm. Selina. Her own voice was quiet, but absolute. "Marcus, initiate Protocol 7. Sky Atlantic Flight 220 even. Immediate." Gas rippled through the cabin. Ethan frowned, confused. "What are you doing?" Selina ended the call without answering. She placed the phone on her lap, folded her hands, and leaned back in her seat as though nothing unusual had occurred. Yet everything had changed. Olivia's live stream exploded. Protocol 7. What's that? Who did she just call, y'all? This is unreal. We're about to see something huge. Comments flooded the screen. She's powerful. They don't even know who they're dealing with. Another that sounded like code, like corporate-level code. Ethan's voice wavered. You think a phone call is going to change this? This is my cabin, my rules. Selina turned her head, her expression soft but unyielding. Mr. Walsh, if these were truly your rules, you would not need to shout them. Authority that depends on humiliation is no authority at all. Her words stung. Ethan's mouth opened, then shut. His eyes flicked toward Olivia's phone, toward the businessman who was now watching with folded arms, toward Monica, whose face betrayed disapproval. For the first time, his power felt fragile. The cabin intercom crackled. Captain Foster's voice emerged, measured but tense. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently addressing an internal matter. For safety, please remain seated. Further instructions will follow shortly. The businessman groaned. Internal matter. This is madness. Just let the woman sit. Olivia caught it on camera. Her viewers erupted with praise. Finally, someone said it. She deserves to stay. This is wrong. Monica approached Ethan quietly. Maybe we should let it go, she whispered. She's done nothing wrong. We're making this worse. Ethan shot her a glare. Stay in line, Monica, or you'll regret it. Selina watched the exchange without speaking. She recognized the flicker of fear in Monica's eyes, the same fear she had once carried in her early career, fear of losing a job, of losing stability, of speaking truth when silence felt safer. Her chest tightened with empathy. Minutes stretched. The passengers shifted in their seats, murmurs rising like waves. Olivia's audience surpassed 35,000 comments rushing like floodwaters. Screenshots raced across platforms. Hashtags formed in real time. Mao, Seat 2A. Protocol 7. Dignity in the sky. Then, a vibration hummed against Selina's phone. A message appeared across the locked screen, visible only to her. Confirmation received. Protocol 7 in effect. She exhaled quietly. The storm had moved beyond this cabin now. Decisions were being made in boardrooms hundreds of miles away. Decisions that would ripple back into this aircraft within minutes. Captain Foster reappeared, his face paler than before. He crouched slightly beside Selina, lowering his voice. "Dr. Harper, forgive me, but who exactly did you just call Selina?" Met his gaze steadily. "Someone with the authority to decide whether Sky Atlantic continues to operate tomorrow." The captain froze. His throat tightened visibly. He stood quickly, muttering something about needing to verify, and disappeared back into the cockpit. Olivia's whisper trembled. "She owns something. I swear she owns something. Y'all, if this is what I think it is, Sky Atlantic is done." Ethan's bravado collapsed into agitation. "This is ridiculous. She's bluffing. She has to be." But deep inside, doubt clawed at him. What if she wasn't? What if the woman he had tried to dismiss with a sneer actually held the keys to the very company that paid his salary? Selina sat still, her calmness like armor. Inside, though, her heart pounded. She thought of her father's words. Dignity is costly, but so is silence. She thought of her daughter, watching this later, perhaps learning what it meant to stand firm, even when the world conspired to move you. Her internal struggle pressed heavy. She wanted peace, anonymity, the chance to travel without turning the cabin into a courtroom. But more than that, she wanted justice. She wanted a world where her daughter would never be told she didn't belong. And so, she sat. And she waited. 10 minutes passed. The engines roared steadily. Drinks remained untouched. Phones continued recording. The air was charged with anticipation. Finally, the intercom crackled again. But this time, the voice was not Captain Foster's. It was deeper, smoother, carrying authority that came from beyond the cockpit. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Robert Kane, Chief Operating Officer of Sky Atlantic Airways. Some of you may be aware of a situation unfolding in our first-class cabin. Let me be perfectly clear. Dr. Selina Harper is not only a valued passenger. She is our principal shareholder and one of the architects of this airline's expansion. Her seat is not in dispute. Her dignity is not in dispute. And any mistreatment she has endured will be addressed immediately." The cabin gasped. Ethan stumbled backward as though struck. Monica covered her mouth. Olivia nearly dropped her phone. Her viewers skyrocketed past 40,000 in seconds. Selina remained composed, though her chest swelled with both relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth had arrived. Sorrow that it had taken humiliation, live streams, and corporate intervention for it to be acknowledged. Robert Kane's voice continued, "Effective immediately. This crew will be subject to internal review. Captain Foster, you will return to your duties. Mr. Walsh, you are relieved of your position for the remainder of this flight. Further consequences will follow. To our passengers, we apologize for this disruption. We are committed to ensuring dignity and respect for all who fly with us." The intercom clicked off. The businessman in gray whispered, "Holy hell." Olivia spoke directly into her phone. "Y'all heard it. She owns the airline. The whole airline. And they just fired the flight attendant live, mid-air. This is history." Selina closed her eyes briefly. Her heart slowed. The storm had broken. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The cabin was no longer the same place it had been an hour ago. Before the intercom crackled with Robert Kane's voice, it had been a confined theater of tension. Now it felt like the center of a storm that had broken open, its waves reaching far beyond the fuselage. Dr. Selina Harper sat still in seat 2A, her breathing even, her posture unchanged. Outwardly, she seemed the embodiment of composure. Inwardly, her chest hummed with conflicting emotions. Relief came first, sharp and fleeting, that her dignity had been affirmed. But sorrow lingered just as strongly. Why did it take her identity as shareholder and principal architect to matter? Why could she not have been believed the moment she presented her boarding pass like any other passenger? Ethan Walsh stood frozen by the galley, the color drained from his face. His arms twitched as though searching for something to hold on to. But there was nothing. He had built his pride around authority in the cabin, but the intercom had stripped it from him in one breath. Passengers stared openly now, some with disdain, some with pity, some with the strange fascination reserved for public downfalls. Monica Reed stepped forward quietly, her voice soft. "Ethan, maybe sit down." His head snapped toward her. "Don't tell me what to do." But his words carried no strength. They cracked, exposing a man unraveling under the weight of consequence. He stumbled into an empty jump seat, pressing his face into his hands. Olivia Grant's phone streamed it all. 46,000 viewers, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We just witnessed a live firing in the sky. They removed him. This is going viral everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, even news outlets are clipping it already." Her audience lit up with comments, "He deserves it." She handled this like a queen. This is bigger than one flight. This is about all of us who've been dismissed, ignored, erased. Selina turned her gaze toward the window, the endless blue stretching beyond the glass. For a moment she allowed herself to rest in the silence inside her mind. But rest was brief. Already she knew the storm would follow her to the ground. Reporters, cameras, headlines. She did not fear them. What she feared was that the core message would be lost, that people would remember only the spectacle of a shareholder humiliating a crew member, rather than the truth of a woman asked, yet again, to prove she belonged. The businessman in the gray suit leaned over, his voice low but audible enough for others nearby. "Dr. Harper, I want to apologize. Earlier, I told you to settle this quietly. I was wrong. I didn't see it for what it was. I see it now." Selina studied him briefly. His apology carried sincerity, though it was late. Still, she inclined her head. Acknowledgement matters. "Thank you." The woman in pearls, who had smirked when Ethan first challenged Selina, lowered her eyes. Her champagne glass sat untouched. Shame flushed her cheeks. For the first time, she understood that silence had aligned her with injustice. Monica approached Selina cautiously. "Dr. Harper, I don't know what to say. I wanted to speak sooner." But Selina's voice was gentle, though firm. "Silence is its own choice, Monica. But so is speaking now." Tears welled faintly in Monica's eyes. She nodded. "Then let me say this. I believe you. And I'm sorry for not standing sooner." Selina gave her a small, warm smile. "Then stand now. That is enough." From the cockpit, the captain emerged again, his face pale but steady. He stopped by Selina's seat, his voice quieter than before. "Dr. Harper, on behalf of the crew, I apologize. I should have trusted your word the first time. I allowed protocol to blind me." Selina regarded him. "Captain Foster, protocol has its place. But when it costs humanity, it has failed. Remember that." His nod was heavy, as though the weight of her words sank deep into his chest. He returned to the cockpit, the door closing behind him. The hum of the engines pressed on, carrying them westward across the continent. Yet inside the cabin, change was unfolding. Conversation sparked between passengers who moments ago had remained silent. A woman in row 3 spoke of her own experiences being followed in stores. A man in row 4 recalled being told he was in the wrong line at an airport lounge. Selina's quiet defiance had opened a door, and others were stepping through with their own truths. Olivia's stream captured it all, her voice trembling as she narrated, "It's more than a seat. It's a mirror. Look at them, talking about things they've hidden for years. This is bigger than one woman. This is about all of us." Selina listened, her eyes softening. The pain in these voices was familiar, yet the courage to speak it aloud here, at 30,000 feet, was new. Something had shifted. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Robert Kane, we've grounded internal meetings. Expect statements at landing. You will not face this alone." She exhaled slowly. Support was good, but she knew statements would not fix what was broken. Only action would, only reform that touched not just her, but every passenger who ever sat where she sat, carrying the same silent burden. Ethan rose suddenly from his seat, his voice cracking. "This isn't fair. You think she's some hero, but she embarrassed me. I was just doing my job." His words fell heavy in the cabin. Selina turned, her voice calm. "Doing your job should never mean diminishing someone else's humanity. That was not your job. Mr. Walsh, that was your choice." He froze, her words slicing cleanly through the last of his defenses. His eyes darted around the cabin, searching for allies, but none came. Even the businessman, who had once complained about inconvenience, stared at him with disapproval. Monica stood taller, no longer afraid. Olivia's phone captured every second, her audience roaring with comments of accountability. Ethan slumped back into his seat, defeated. For the first time, silence felt heavier than words. Selina closed her eyes again, letting the rhythm of the engine steady her heart. Her mind drifted to her daughter once more. What lesson would she take from this? Would she see her mother as unshaken, as strong, or would she sense the exhaustion beneath the calm, the deep weariness of fighting the same battle again and again? Selina hoped it would be the former, but she could not deny the latter. The flight pressed on. Hours still stretched ahead before landing. Yet everyone on board knew they were living through something that would echo far longer than the journey itself. Selina opened her eyes, gazing at the horizon beyond the window. She whispered softly, words meant for no one but herself. "Dignity is not negotiable." And though her voice was quiet, the message carried. Olivia's camera caught it, and within minutes, the world would hear it too. The hours after the announcement dragged like heavy chains, yet each minute seemed to etch itself into the memory of everyone in the cabin. The hum of the engines filled the silence between conversations. Passengers shifted in their seats, phones buzzing with alerts as the outside world devoured every piece of footage leaking from 30,000 feet above. Selina Harper kept her posture steady. She had become the quiet axis around which the entire cabin revolved. Every glance flicked toward her carried a mixture of awe, shame, admiration, and curiosity. She didn't revel in it. She had never wanted an audience. What she wanted was respect, the kind that should have been automatic, not conditional. Olivia Grant's phone barely rested. Her battery pack was nearly drained, but her feed showed no signs of slowing. Viewers climbed past 70,000, comments flying faster than she could read. Headlines from major outlets were already breaking. Black CEO humiliated on flight. Airline COO intervenes mid-air. The story had escaped their cabin and now belonged to millions. Ethan Walsh remained slumped in his seat, head in his hands. His shoulders jerked occasionally, his breathing uneven. Every so often he muttered words to himself, fragments of defense, shards of denial. "I was just protocol." She tricked me. Not fair. He looked up once, catching sight of Selina's calm profile. The contrast gutted him. She had not raised her voice, had not threatened him, yet she had dismantled his career with a few words and an unshakable presence. Monica Reed sat beside him, uneasy. She wanted to comfort him, yet she couldn't deny the truth Selina had spoken. Ethan hadn't just followed protocol. He had let prejudice steer his judgment. And now, watching Selina's quiet strength. Monica wondered what it would mean if she kept her silence any longer. "Dr. Harper," Monica said at last, her voice barely above the hum of the engines. May I ask you something?" Selina turned her gaze gently. "Of course." Monica hesitated. "How do you stay so calm when he kept pressing? When people doubted you? I would have shouted. I would have lost it." Selina's smile was faint, but warm. "Do you think I didn't want to? Inside, I burned. But every time, I remembered my daughter's face. I remembered that the world would judge me not only for my words, but for my tone, my posture, even my breathing. I've learned that silence and stillness can cut deeper than anger." Monica nodded slowly, her throat tight. She understood. She had watched Selina's restraint become the very weapon that turned the tide. The businessman in gray cleared his throat from across the aisle. "Dr. Harper, I've worked in finance for 30 years. I've seen meetings where voices like yours weren't invited to the table. I never thought about how often that happens, or how it feels on the other side. Today I saw it, and I can't stop thinking about the times I stayed silent. I'll do better." Selina met his gaze steadily. Recognition is a start. Change comes next. The woman in pearls dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. She hadn't spoken since her smirk in the beginning. Now, with her head bowed, she whispered, "I was wrong. I thought you were making trouble. I see now you were just asking for what was already yours." Selina didn't respond with triumph. She simply said, "Then you've learned. That matters more than the mistake." The flight attendants not involved in the confrontation moved quietly through the aisles, serving water and snacks with subdued courtesy. Each glance they cast toward Selina carried apology, even if unspoken. The cabin had become a classroom, and she was both teacher and lesson. Olivia adjusted her phone, whispering into her stream. "They're all reckoning with it. You can see it in their faces. One woman's dignity just shifted an entire plane. Imagine what it could do for an industry." Her audience exploded with hearts and comments. "She's my hero. I'm showing this to my boss tomorrow. This has to change everything." Selina leaned back into her seat, finally closing her eyes. But peace refused to come. Instead, memories surfaced. Meetings where her ideas had been dismissed until echoed by someone else. Lounges where attendants had second-guessed her ticket. Boardrooms where she had been introduced as the assistant despite her title. Each moment pressed against her ribs like bruises. Today was simply another entry in a long ledger. But maybe, she thought, this could be the one that forced balance. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Robert Kane. Press already circling. Land prepared for immediate statement. We'll be waiting at the gate. Selina exhaled through her nose. She had known this was coming, yet the reality felt heavy. She did not want to be paraded as a symbol. She wanted transformation. Would the airline stand with her when the cameras were gone? Or would this become another corporate apology buried in headlines? The seatbelt sign chimed on. The captain's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent. Please secure your belongings and prepare for landing." His tone was even, But there was a gravity beneath it. Everyone on board knew the descent was not into an ordinary arrival. They were descending into consequence. Ethan stirred at the announcement. He looked around the cabin, eyes darting, desperate for a lifeline. He caught Monica's gaze, but she did not move to reassure him. He caught the businessman's stare, but the man looked away. He tried Selina, but her eyes were closed again, serene as though he no longer existed. Panic crept into his chest. His career, his reputation, his future all unraveling with every mile closer to the ground. He wanted to plead, to shout, to demand forgiveness. Yet deep down, he knew nothing he could say would erase the footage already racing across the globe. Monica reached over gently, placing a hand on his arm. "Ethan, learn from this. Don't waste it." He looked at her, tears brimming. For the first time. He nodded. The descent grew bumpier, the seatbelt sign flashing insistently. Passengers braced themselves, but their minds were far from turbulence. They were preparing for what waited beyond the runway lights. Reporters, headlines, questions, consequences. Selina opened her eyes as the ground drew nearer. She felt the weight of what awaited her, but also the clarity. This was bigger than her, bigger than Ethan, bigger than one flight. She whispered softly, so quietly that only Monica heard. "We can't fix the past, but we can design the future." Monica swallowed hard, nodding, "And you're the one to do it." The wheels touched down with a heavy thud, the cabin jolting forward. Gas filled the air. Then silence. Then a slow round of applause. Not for the landing, for the woman in seat 2A, who had carried herself with dignity when stripped of it, and in doing so, forced an entire system to look at itself. The plane slowed, the runway lights streaking past the windows. The engines roared, then eased into a hum as the aircraft taxied toward the gate. Selina straightened her blazer, her face composed. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The plane rolled toward the terminal, its wheels humming against the concrete, the weight of landing pressing into every passenger's chest. But what waited beyond the window was no ordinary arrival. A crowd had gathered at Gate 47, visible even before the aircraft stopped. Cameras flashed through the glass. Lights glared, and silhouettes pressed close to the glass wall. Selina Harper could see them clearly from her seat. Dozens of journalists, passengers with phones raised, airline staff in sharp uniforms. The story that began in silence had already multiplied beyond her control. A familiar heaviness settled inside her. This wasn't just her story anymore. It belonged to the world, watching. The intercom chimed. Captain Foster's voice emerged, subdued but formal. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Local time is 6:32 p.m. Ma'am, please remain seated as we taxi to the gate. We appreciate your patience today." Patience, Selina thought. A curious word for what had unfolded. It wasn't patience that had been tested, but dignity. The plane eased into its final position, the seatbelt sign blinking off. Passengers unbuckled, the shuffle of belongings filling the air. Yet no one stood. All eyes turned toward Selina. They knew instinctively that the flight would not end until she moved. Olivia Grant whispered into her phone, "We're here. Gate 47. Look at that crowd. This isn't just a story. It's a movement. Everyone's waiting for her." Her live stream had crossed 90,000 viewers. News outlets were rebroadcasting her feed in real time. Monica Reed lingered by the galley, torn between duty and conscience. She wanted to walk beside Selina, to offer protection of some kind, but fear held her back. She knew cameras were waiting to capture every step, every expression. Still, She clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "If not now." Then when Ethan Walsh sat rigid in his jump seat, his face pale, he knew what awaited him as well. Cameras, consequences, headlines with his name attached to disgrace. He had no shield left, no uniform strong enough to cover what he had done. The door opened with a hiss. The jet bridge connected. A flood of sound rushed in shouts from reporters, the crackle of cameras, the murmurs of officials waiting to board. Robert Kane, the COO, stepped through first. His presence was deliberate, his posture crisp. He looked directly at Selina, nodding once, an acknowledgement that carried both apology and deference. "Dr. Harper," he said, his voice carrying over the cabin. "Would you accompany me, please?" Selina rose slowly, smoothing her blazer, gathering her leather bag with deliberate calm. Every eye followed her movement. As she stood, passengers began to clap. It wasn't loud at first, just a scattered applause, but it grew quickly. Some clapped for her dignity, some for her strength, others because they sensed history in motion. Selina inclined her head gently toward them. Then she walked forward, her steps measured, her gaze steady. Olivia followed with her phone raised high, narrating every second. "She's walking out now. This is the moment." The jet bridge was blinding. Cameras flashed in rapid succession. Voices shouted questions. "Dr. Harper, what happened on the plane? Do you plan to sue? Is this the end for Sky Atlantic?" Selina didn't answer immediately. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than words. She walked steadily beside Robert Kane, letting the noise wash over her, her expression composed. As they cleared the threshold, Kane gestured toward a cluster of microphones hastily assembled near the gate. Behind them stood executives, security, and airport officials. The scene looked less like a routine arrival and more like the prelude to a press conference. Kane leaned close. "The board wanted me here to contain this, but it's not mine to contain. It's yours to lead. Speak if you wish, or don't. Either way, we'll follow." Selina paused, inhaling deeply. Her eyes scanned the crowd faces, eager, hostile, curious, hungry. Then she thought of her father's words, of her daughter's question. She thought of the silence she had endured in boardrooms, in banks, in lounges, and she knew silence would not serve her here. She stepped up to the microphones. The crowd hushed. Even the cameras seemed to pause. "My name is Dr. Selina Harper," she began, her voice steady. "Carrying, this evening, on Sky Atlantic Flight 227. I was told repeatedly that I did not belong in the seat I had purchased. I was asked to move. I was doubted, questioned, dismissed, and I remained." Her words echoed across the terminal. She let them settle before continuing. "I remained not because I enjoy confrontation. I remained because dignity is not negotiable. And I remained because too many have been asked to move. Too many have been told they do not belong. And too many have given in to silence for the sake of peace. Peace without justice is not peace at all." Murmurs rippled. Cameras flashed furiously. Olivia's live stream comments erupted. "Yes, preach. This is history." Selina's gaze swept the crowd. "I am not here to destroy an airline. I am here to demand it live up to its promise. Every passenger who buys a ticket deserves respect. Every human being deserves dignity. Tonight, I was reminded that respect is too often conditional. That must change." Robert Kane shifted beside her, his expression solemn. He knew her words were no longer just personal. They were corporate. They were industry-shaping. Selina leaned forward slightly, her tone soft but piercing. To Sky Atlantic, to every airline, to every institution that serves people, hear me clearly. Dignity delayed is dignity denied, and tonight is the line. The applause erupted. It wasn't scattered this time. It was thunderous, rising from passengers, from onlookers, from even those who had once doubted. Selina stood still, letting it wash over her face calm but her heart heavy. She hadn't wanted to be a symbol, but now she was one. Reporters shouted again, clamoring for more. Dr. Harper, what happens next? She considered her answer carefully. What happens next is accountability, not just for one flight attendant, not just for one crew, but for a system that allowed this to happen. I will not walk away quietly. I will work with this airline to ensure that what happened to me never happens again. Not here, not anywhere. The crowd roared again, phones flashing like lightning. Robert Kane stepped forward, his voice firm. On behalf of Sky Atlantic, I confirm we will be working directly with Dr. Harper to address this. Effective immediately. We are launching a full review of protocols, training, and oversight. We will not tolerate discrimination in any form. But the spotlight remained on Selina. She had claimed it not with anger, not with spectacle, but with the calm insistence that dignity was hers to keep. As she stepped back from the microphones, Monica emerged hesitantly from the jet bridge. She looked nervous, her uniform crisp but her eyes unsure. Selina saw her and extended a hand. The gesture was small, but powerful. Monica grasped it, her relief evident. Cameras captured the moment, and it was destined to become an image replayed countless times, a symbol of solidarity across the divide, of uniform and passenger. Ethan never emerged with the same grace. He was escorted quietly by security, his head bowed, his name already trending for the wrong reasons. His silence was not chosen, it was forced. Selina walked toward the terminal exit, flanked by Robert Kane and airport security. The crowd parted, reporters shouting, passengers filming. Each step she took was steady, measured, deliberate. She was not rushing away from the moment. She was carrying it with her, shaping it into something larger than a single flight. And as she passed Olivia Grant, still streaming live to tens of thousands, she offered a single sentence that the world would remember. Dignity is not for sale. The feed captured it. The terminal echoed it. The world would soon repeat it. The terminal lights glared bright, cameras still flashing as Selina Harper left the gate, escorted by Robert Kane and a small phalanx of security officers. Reporters surged forward, microphones extended, questions flying like arrows. Dr. Harper, will you sue? Do you want Walsh prosecuted? Will you demand the CEO resign? Selina didn't break stride. Her face remained composed, her voice absent. She knew better than to answer in the crush of noise. Anything she said here would be stripped of nuance, reduced to a headline. She would speak when the moment demanded it, not when cameras screamed for it. Outside the terminal, a black sedan waited. Its tinted windows reflected the chaos back at the crowd. Kane opened the door, his tone firm. You'll want to come with me? The board is meeting tonight? They're waiting? Selina paused only briefly before sliding inside. She knew this was inevitable. From the moment she said Protocol 7, the path had been set. The city blurred past as the car threaded through traffic. Kane sat beside her, his phone buzzing nonstop. Every few seconds he read another message, his face tightening. The board is split, he admitted. Half want to apologize, close ranks, and pray it blows over. The others, They know this isn't containable. They're scared of you. Selina, scared because you hold both the truth and the shares. Selina watched the city lights flicker on the window. Fear won't save them. Action might. He nodded, though his shoulders sagged. Be ready. They'll come at you with questions meant to diminish. They'll say you embarrass the company. They'll ask if you want blood. She closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. Her father's voice echoed again. Dignity is costly, but silence costs more. When the car pulled into the headquarters tower, a line of black SUVs and luxury sedans already filled the drive. Inside, the boardroom lights blazed against the night sky. Security ushered them upstairs. The moment Selina entered the boardroom, conversation froze. 12 directors sat around the long, polished table, their faces a mixture of worry, defiance, and calculation. At the head sat Henry Callahan, the aging chairman, his silver hair sharp under the fluorescent lights, his gaze fixed on Selina like a judge measuring a defendant. "Dr. Harper," Callahan said, his voice cold. "Thank you for coming. Let's dispense with theatrics. You've put this airline in jeopardy. Our stock dropped 6% in the last hour. Media is circling like vultures. You've made us vulnerable." Selina's voice was calm, steady. "I didn't make you vulnerable. Your culture did. I simply refused to hide it." A murmur rippled around the table. One director, a woman with sharp glasses, leaned forward. "Let's not ignore facts. You hold 13% of our shares. That makes you important, yes, but it does not make you the airline." Selina met her gaze. "Without me, your Asia expansion doesn't exist. Without me, half your contracts collapse. 13% is not a number, it's leverage, and I am prepared to use it." Kane shifted uneasily, but Selina's words landed like thunder. Several directors exchanged glances, realizing she was not here to plead. Another director, younger, more brash, snapped. "What do you want?" A public firing, an apology. Money. Selina stood taller. "What I want is systemic change. Training isn't enough. Apologies aren't enough. I want enforceable accountability, independent oversight, transparent reporting, and binding consequences." Callahan's jaw tightened. "You're asking us to hand over the keys." "No," Selina corrected softly. "I'm asking you to honor the passengers who hand you their trust every single day. Trust is the real currency of this business. And tonight, you've bankrupted it." The words hung in the air. Even the skeptical woman in glasses shifted uncomfortably. Kane broke the silence, his tone urgent. "She's right. We can't spin this. The footage is everywhere. Viewers topped 100,000 live. It's already being replayed on every major network. The only way through this is to let Dr. Harper lead the response. If we resist, we'll look like cowards protecting bigotry." Callahan's eyes narrowed at Kane, then at Selina. "And what if your response destroys us?" Selina's gaze didn't flinch. "If truth destroys you, you are already broken." The room went still. One director finally sighed, rubbing his temples. "She has the power. Henry, and the public. Fighting her will ruin us faster." Callahan leaned back, exhaling heavily. "Then let's hear it. Spell it out. Dr. Harper, what exactly is your demand?" Selina stepped closer to the table. Her voice filled the room, quiet but impossible to ignore. "First, independent audits of all passenger complaints, not buried in bureaucracy, published, transparent, and reviewed by external advocates. Second, a real-time reporting system accessible to passengers and staff, with escalation beyond local supervisors. Third, a zero-tolerance policy for proven discrimination, not just words consequences, tied directly to executive bonuses. Fourth, a passenger dignity fund, paid into annually, to compensate those harmed until the culture truly changes. The directors shifted, murmurs rising. Some bristled at the cost. Others scribbled notes, already calculating. Selina pressed on, and finally, leadership accountability, training at every level, starting with you. Culture comes from the top. If you want this airline to survive, you must change not only procedures, but yourselves. The silence that followed was thick as stone. Callahan finally spoke, his voice low. "You want to remake us in your image?" Selina shook her head. "No, I want to remake you in the image of justice. You built an airline. I'm offering you a chance to build a legacy." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the woman in glasses spoke, her tone measured. "She's right. If we resist, we lose both reputation and revenue. If we act, we might just lead the industry instead of chasing it." Others murmured in agreement. Even the brash director leaned back, his face pale with reluctant acceptance. Callahan stared at Selina, his eyes narrowing, weighing her like a chess player forced into checkmate. At last, he exhaled. "Very well. We'll convene a task force. You'll chair it. We'll draft policy within 30 days. Selina didn't smile. She knew this was only the beginning. 30 days is too long. You have 10. The world isn't waiting. Neither am I. The room erupted with protest, but Selina's voice cut clean through it. 10 days, or I go public with every detail I know, every contract clause I hold, and every failure you've buried. You'll have more than stock drops to worry about then." Callahan slammed his hand on the table. Enough. His face flushed red, but even he knew the truth. She had them cornered. Silence fell once more. Finally, he slumped back in his chair. 10 days, he muttered. Selina inclined her head slightly. "Then let's begin." The meeting dissolved into murmurs. Directors already pulling out phones. Staff scribbling notes. Selina turned toward the window, gazing out at the city lights beyond. She felt the weight of what she had just forced. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was movement, and movement, she knew, was the seed of change. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Olivia Grant. "Your words are everywhere. They're calling it the Harper Protocol." Selina allowed herself the faintest smile. A protocol. Not hers. Not really. But if her name was what it took to remind the world that dignity was not negotiable, then she would carry it. When Selina Harper left the boardroom that night, the air outside felt thicker than before, heavy with both victory and burden. She had forced their hand. 10 days for systemic reform, not a day more. The directors had agreed, some grudgingly, some with quiet relief. Yet Selina knew the true battle had only just begun. As she stepped into the waiting sedan, Robert Kane followed close behind, his face drawn with exhaustion. He loosened his tie, sinking into the seat across from her. "You realize what you just did?" he said, not accusingly, but with awe. "They'll call it the Harper Protocol. Every airline in the country will be forced to respond. You've lit a fire that won't go out." Selina leaned her head back against the leather. For a moment, she closed her eyes. "I didn't want a fire. I wanted respect." Kane sighed. Sometimes they're the same thing. Her phone buzzed again and again, notifications spilling across the screen. News outlets had picked up her speech from Gate 47. Editorials were already debating whether she had saved the airline or destroyed it. Hashtags swirled globally. Dignity is not negotiable. Harper Protocol. Clips of her calm words were replaying on every platform. She opened one message. Olivia Grant, the live streamer. They're playing your speech on Times Square screens. The world's watching. Selina exhaled slowly. The world was watching. Yes. But her daughter would be watching too. That thought weighed heavier than all the headlines. What lesson would she take? That her mother had been humiliated? That power was the only shield against disrespect? Or would she see the deeper truth that dignity could be defended with calm, with resolve, with words sharper than any blade? The car pulled up outside a downtown hotel. Kane gestured. We've booked a suite for you here. Safer than going home tonight. Press is swarming every corner. She nodded, stepping into the lobby where flashes already greeted her. Reporters shouted questions, but she moved silently past them, guided by security. When the elevator doors closed, the noise fell away, leaving her with only the soft hum of machinery and her thoughts. In the suite, the city sprawled out below, glittering but distant. Selina sank into a chair, her bag sliding to the floor. For the first time that day, she allowed her shoulders to slump. The adrenaline that had sustained her bled away, leaving fatigue in its place. She whispered softly, to herself, alone, I'm tired of fighting. But the fight was not done. Across the city, in a smaller apartment, Ethan Walsh sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. His face was blotched from tears, his uniform jacket discarded in a heap. News headlines plastered his name across the internet. Walsh removed mid-flight. Chief Attendant humiliates CEO. His friends hadn't called. His colleagues hadn't answered. Even his mother had left a voicemail filled not with comfort, but disappointment. He gripped his head, muttering to himself, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't. I was just doing my job. But even he knew it wasn't true. He hadn't been just doing his job. He had enjoyed the authority. He had believed in his right to question, to diminish, to assert control. And now the cost of that belief surrounded him like walls closing in. Monica Reed sat in her own apartment, still in uniform, staring at the footage replaying online. She saw her own face in the background, silent while Selina fought alone. Shame burnt her cheeks. But she also saw the moment at Gate 47 when Selina extended her hand to her. That gesture replayed in her mind like a promise. Tomorrow, she decided, she would speak. She would not hide behind silence again. Meanwhile, the board of directors was already fracturing. Callahan, the chairman, raged in late-night calls, declaring Selina a threat to the airline's autonomy. Others countered that she had saved them from collapse. Market analysts flooded cable news, some praising her as a visionary, others warning she had overstepped. Investors shifted nervously, their eyes on the stock ticker as though it foretold destiny itself. Selina stood by the window of her suite, watching the city pulse beneath her. She thought of her father again, of how he had endured his own humiliations in silence, working twice as hard for half the recognition. She thought of her daughter, asleep in another city, unaware that tomorrow her classmates might whisper about her mother's name trending across the globe. The phone rang. It was a video call from her daughter. Selina hesitated before answering, bracing herself. Mom. The girl's face filled the screen, curious, worried. Are you okay? Everyone's talking about you. They're saying you own the airline or something. Is it true? Selina smiled faintly, though her eyes stung. I'm okay, baby. And yes, it's true. I had to remind them that I belong, just like anyone else. Her daughter frowned. But why didn't they believe you at first? The question pierced Selina more than any headline. She took a deep breath. Because sometimes people see what they expect to see, not what's real. And when they expect less of us, we have to show them more. The girl nodded slowly, though her eyes remained troubled. Did you win? Mom Selina paused. I didn't win. I stood. That's what matters. After the call ended, Selina sat in silence, her hands trembling slightly. The toll was real, not just for her, but for those she loved. Yet the weight of being a symbol was not one she could put down. Not anymore. The following morning, the headlines were everywhere. Harper forces airline to bend. Harper Protocol looms over industry. Talk shows debated whether she was hero or disruptor. Protesters gathered outside Sky Atlantic headquarters, chanting for reform. Civil rights groups issued statements of support. The story had become something larger than her, larger than the airline, larger even than aviation. It had become a question about dignity itself. In the hotel conference room, Kane met her again. His eyes were tired, but his voice carried urgency. They're already drafting reforms. Callahan is pushing back hard, but the others are swaying. You need to be ready to speak publicly again. The world won't let you stay silent. Selina rubbed her temples. I never wanted to be the story. I wanted the story to be the truth. Kane leaned forward. Then make it so. Write it in your own voice. Don't let them spin it. You're not just defending yourself anymore. You're shaping what comes next for everyone. She looked at him, her resolve sharpening. Exhaustion remained. Yes, but beneath it was the same current that had carried her through Seat 2A, through Gate 47, through the boardroom storm. Then we don't wait, she said. We draft the Harper Protocol. 10 days. No excuses. Kane nodded. I'll stand with you. Selina turned back toward the window, the city sunlight blazing on the glass. She whispered again, not for him, but for herself. Dignity is not for sale, and neither is time. By the third day after the flight, the word Harper Protocol had already hardened into the public lexicon. News anchors repeated it with reverence. Analysts dissected it. And activists carried signs bearing the phrase outside airports from New York to Los Angeles. For millions, the name represented not just an incident, but an ultimatum. Dignity must be built into the system, not left to the mercy of bias. Selina Harper sat at the head of a long oak table in a temporary conference suite, her laptop open, papers scattered before her. Robert Kane sat at her left, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. Monica Reed sat across, her presence tentative but firm. Olivia Grant had been invited as well, not for her live streaming skills, but for the raw truth she represented. The eyes of ordinary passengers. Selina tapped her pen softly against the table. We have 10 days, she said. We are already on day 3. The board thinks this is a negotiation. It isn't. It's a blueprint. If we do this right, we set the standard for the entire industry. If we fail, it becomes a headline that fades, and nothing changes. Monica's voice shook slightly. Where do we even start? Selina's gaze softened, but her tone stayed sharp. We start with the truth. What happened on Flight 227 wasn't a one-off. It was the symptom of a culture. We need measures that dig deeper than apologies. Kane leaned forward. She's right. The auditors are already circling. Investors want to see metrics, not statements. If we can show accountability tied to dollars and oversight, we'll have leverage. Olivia, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. "I'm not corporate. I don't know about contracts or audits, but I know what I saw, and I know what the world saw. People don't trust the airline anymore. They need to see consequences they can believe in. Otherwise, it's just another press release." Selina nodded, scribbling on her notepad. "Independent oversight, real-time reporting, zero tolerance tied to executive bonuses, passenger dignity fund." She looked up, eyes narrowing with focus, "and mandatory cultural accountability for leadership, starting with the board. They cannot exempt themselves." Monica exhaled slowly, the words settling like stone in her chest. She had never seen a passenger, let alone a black woman, speak with such authority in a space that usually silenced dissent. It was both terrifying and inspiring. Meanwhile, across town, Henry Callahan was not idle. In a private office lined with mahogany shelves, he paced furiously while speaking on a secure line. "She's seizing control," he hissed. "She's not reforming the airline, she's hijacking it. If we give her 10 days, she'll own us outright." The voice on the other end was calm, a fellow director. "Then we stall, push back, feed the press stories about her being disruptive, reckless, paint her as self-serving." Callahan slammed his fist on the desk. "Yes, if she wants war, we'll give her one." But what Callahan underestimated was the velocity of the public. His leaks about Selina being an opportunist backfired almost immediately. News programs replayed her calm words from Gate 47 alongside clips of his dismissive statements. The contrast was glaring. Online, hashtags mocking him surged. "Do Callahan collapse. Do dignity. Over dollars." Back in the conference suite, Selina's team refined their draft. They mapped out a digital reporting platform where any passenger could file a complaint mid-flight, instantly logged and visible to an independent review board. They sketched outlines for mandatory training modules tied to crew certification renewals. They drafted a compensation fund with transparent payouts for substantiated cases. Olivia leaned forward. "People need to see faces, not just policies. Survivors of discrimination should be able to share their stories without fear. That transparency will keep the system honest." Selina scribbled the phrase "stories as accountability." Monica hesitated, then added, "Crew need protection too. Some of us want to speak up, but supervisors bury our reports. If you build this, it has to protect us from retaliation." Selina met her eyes. "Then it will. Dignity belongs to everyone on board, passengers and crew alike. No more silence." The plan was taking shape, a fusion of corporate policy and lived truth. For the first time in years, Monica felt her silence breaking. For the first time, Olivia saw her live stream morph into legislation. For Kane, the strategy became his lifeline proof that the airline could transform rather than collapse. But for Selina, the plan was more than policy. It was legacy. At night, alone in her suite, she stared at the city lights and wrestled with her own doubts. She thought of her daughter's voice asking, "Did you win? Mom?" She thought of the weight of being turned into a symbol she had never asked to be. She thought of the long ledger of indignities she had carried silently, and wondered if one set of reforms could truly balance it. Her inner voice battled between hope and weariness. You can't fix the world in 10 days, but you can start the change that forces the world to fix itself. She whispered softly to the empty room, "I am more than a symbol. I am a woman who stood. Let that be enough." On the 7th day, the draft was ready, a 40-page document titled The Harper Protocol: Dignity and Accountability in Aviation. It outlined clear steps, enforceable timelines, binding penalties. Kane held it in his hands like scripture. This isn't just policy. It's a revolution. Selina corrected him gently. No, it's a blueprint for fairness. Revolution only comes if they resist. They didn't have to wait long to see which path the board would choose. Callahan stormed into the headquarters auditorium where the board, executives, and press had gathered. Cameras rolled live, the world watching. He stood at the podium, his tone dripping with forced charm. We value Dr. Harper's contributions, but let us not overstate one incident. Sky Atlantic has served millions with pride. Murmurs of discomfort rippled through the room. Callahan pressed on. Yes, mistakes were made. Yes, feelings were hurt. But we must not surrender the airline to reactionary demands. Selina rose slowly from her seat, the eyes of the world turning toward her. She walked to the podium, standing just a few feet from Callahan. Her presence alone silenced the murmurs. Feelings, she said, her voice cutting clear through the microphones. This was not about feelings. It was about dignity. And dignity denied is a wound deeper than numbers can measure. She placed the document on the podium, her hand firm on the cover. This is the Harper Protocol. 10 days. Transparent, enforceable, non-negotiable. This is not surrender. This is survival. The room erupted in applause, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. Callahan's face darkened, but his defiance was drowned beneath the surge of public support. Selina stood tall, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. The world is watching, and the world deserves better than excuses. The choice is yours. Lead with dignity, or be left behind. The auditorium buzzed with tension. Reporters leaned forward in their chairs, pens scratching, cameras fixed on the stage. Employees filled the back rows, whispering nervously among themselves. Investors dialed in from glass towers across the globe, their voices muted but their influence heavy. At the podium, the Harper Protocol rested like a verdict waiting to be read. Selina Harper's hand still lay on the cover, steady as stone. She did not flinch under the lights, nor under the eyes of millions watching live. Across from her, Henry Callahan's jaw clenched tight. His resistance had begun to look less like strength and more like desperation. He shuffled his notes but found no words that could outshine hers. He knew it. Everyone knew it. Robert Kane leaned into his microphone, his voice calm but firm. This isn't about one incident. It's about a culture. We can deny it and sink, or embrace it and lead. Dr. Harper has given us the blueprint. The only question left is whether we have the courage to follow it. The directors murmured, their faces pale in the glow of the cameras. They had entered the room divided, but the tide had shifted. The weight of public opinion bore down heavier than any quarterly report. Selina straightened, her voice filling the space. Dignity cannot be optional. Trust cannot be conditional. And leadership cannot be selective. The Harper Protocol is not a request. It is the minimum standard of humanity. If this board cannot commit to that, then this board does not deserve its seats. Gas rippled through the auditorium. Even Kane blinked at her bluntness. But Selina's eyes did not waver. She had learned long ago that truth was sharper when unsoftened. Callahan finally snapped, his voice cracking under pressure. You presume too much power, Dr. Harper. You think one viral moment makes you the conscience of this airline. You've embarrassed us. You've endangered us. You've Selina cut in, her tone calm, almost gentle. I didn't endanger you. Henry, your silence did. Your culture did. Your refusal to see did. If you call truth an embarrassment, perhaps you should ask yourself why. The silence that followed was deafening. Cameras zoomed close. capturing every flicker of his expression. The world was watching, and in that moment, it was clear who held the moral ground. One by one, directors began to nod. The woman in glasses raised her hand. "I vote yes." Another followed. "Yes." A third. "Yes." The momentum grew until the vote was undeniable. The board accepted the Harper Protocol unanimously, Callahan included, though his reluctant yes came with eyes downcast. Applause erupted from the employees in the back, rippling forward until even the reporters clapped, their pens forgotten for the moment. Selina exhaled, the faintest smile touching her lips. Not triumph resolve. The meeting dissolved into chaos as reporters shouted questions. Kane gestured to end the session, but Selina lingered at the podium for one last word. "This is not my victory. It is the beginning of your responsibility. Hold us accountable. Hold me accountable. Together, we will make sure no one on any flight, in any seat, is ever told again that they do not belong." The applause surged again, echoing through the auditorium. Later that evening, in a quiet office away from the lights, Selina found herself staring at her reflection in the window. The city shimmered below, alive with energy, but inside she felt a deep stillness. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe fully. Behind her, Monica Reed entered hesitantly. "Dr. Harper." Selina turned, her expression softening. "Monica, come in." Monica twisted her hands nervously. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I stayed silent too long. I let fear guide me. But when you reached for me at the gate, I felt something shift. I won't stay quiet anymore." Selina stepped closer, resting a hand on Monica's shoulder. "Then you've already begun the change. Never underestimate the power of one voice refusing silence." Monica's eyes shimmered with gratitude. She left the office taller than she had entered. Across the city, Ethan Walsh sat in a dimly lit bar. His career evaporated, his name stained. He had been dismissed officially that morning, his badge revoked, his access erased. On the TV above the bar, the news replayed Selina's speech, her calm authority radiating across the screen. Patrons clapped. Some raised glasses in her honor. Ethan sank lower into his seat. He whispered into his glass, "I could have just listened. I could have just looked at her and seen a person." His words fell into the ice, unheard by anyone but himself. Meanwhile, Olivia Grant uploaded her final live stream from the week. Sitting cross-legged on her bed, she looked into the camera with tired but determined eyes. "I never expected a flight to change my life, but it did. I saw dignity defended. I saw truth spoken. And I saw what happens when silence breaks." The Harper Protocol isn't just about airlines, it's about us. About how we see each other, about how we treat each other. So ask yourself when the next moment comes, will you stay silent or will you stand? Her feed exploded with support, comments pouring in from around the world. Teachers promised to share the video with students. Activists pledged to carry the message into their own fights. Ordinary people wrote of moments when they had felt invisible, unseen, unheard, and vowed not to let it happen again. Back in her suite, Selina finally allowed herself to rest. She sat on the edge of the bed, her daughter's photo on the nightstand, her phone buzzing with endless requests. She muted them all. For one night, she needed quiet. She whispered softly to the photo, "We stood. Baby, that's enough." Her daughter's earlier words replayed in her mind. "Did you win, Mom, tonight?" She could answer honestly. Winning wasn't the point. Standing was, and from that stand had come something greater than victory change in motion. The Harper Protocol rolled out across Sky Atlantic within weeks. Complaint data went public for the first time. Independent auditors reviewed cases in real time. Crew training shifted from checkboxes to immersive accountability. Within 6 months, discrimination complaints dropped by 70%. Within a year, other airlines adopted similar systems, some reluctantly, some proudly. The movement spread beyond aviation into banks, hotels, hospitals. The phrase Harper Protocol became shorthand for dignity enforced by design, not left to chance. And through it all, Selina Harper remained both visible and elusive. She gave speeches when needed, sat at tables where decisions were made, but she never sought celebrity. She carried the burden of being a symbol with grace. But she never forgot she was more than that. On the anniversary of Flight 227, she boarded another plane. This time, she sat quietly in seat 20. Her ticket scanned without question. Her presence met with respect. A passenger across the aisle recognized her, eyes widening. "You're her," he whispered. Selina smiled faintly. "I'm just traveling, like you." But the truth was larger. She was not just traveling. She was carrying a legacy in motion. The engines roared, the plane lifted, and for the first time in a long time, Selina felt light. Some stories end when the plane lands, but this one lingered inside headlines, inside boardrooms, and inside hearts. Dr. Selina Harper didn't just defend her seat. She defended the principle that dignity is not negotiable. We saw silence turn into strength, fear turn into courage, and one woman's calm resolve ripple into an entire movement. But let us not forget her journey began in humiliation, in a moment no passenger should ever endure. That truth should unsettle us, should remind us how far we still have to go. As you leave this story, ask yourself when the next test comes at work, in line, on a flight, will you stay quiet, or will you stand carry this with love, with respect, and with resolve? Because Selina's story isn't just hers. It belongs to all of us who believe in fairness, justice, and humanity. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue bringing you stories that inspire change and challenge injustice. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and never forget, dignity is everyone's right.